shocker, I think, to everybody, because on Friday, just randomly, the Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins, the winningest coach in franchise history. On Saturday, their GM, Zach Kleiman, took responsibility, saying, quote, urgency is a core principle of ours. So deciding to go on with the move, he did not give a reason for the firing. At the time of it, they were 5th in the West with 9 games remaining. That's what happens on Friday. So I think everyone was like, and you even put it on Twitter, Chandler, WTF. That is the only response most of us could come up with. What are you thinking?
This is just part of the business that I hate. Even, I've never been a coach, as a player and now part of the media. It just doesn't make sense. And I don't know Taylor Jenkins from Adam. I've never met the guy, but from an outside looking in, he's been an unbelievable coach. You just said it. He's the most winning coach in the history of the Grizzlies. He seems like a player's coach. I understand that their offense has shifted a little bit. He kind of went away from pick and roll, and now they're kind of doing all this other movement cutting stuff. They haven't beaten a lot of great teams. But the coaching, it's just a raw end of the deal that these guys get because they put in the time. This guy's dealt with so many injuries too. Look at that roster and look at their main guys, their core guys. They've all missed time. They've all missed so much time, and they've still managed to stay afloat. They're still in the 5 seed. They're still a game out of home court advantage in the playoffs this year with such a young, up and coming, talented team. And with 9 games left, it makes no sense to me. Maybe it's something personal. Maybe there's something we don't know in that locker room that these guys weren't rolling with Taylor Jenkins. But from the outside looking in, this guy's a brilliant basketball mind. Seems like a great dude, and he's made the most of what this team has been with the health issues that they've been through. So I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't know him. Maybe there's something else there, but it seems like he's done a fantastic job there, and no doubt in my mind he'll land somewhere else.
Yeah, listen, I work with Taylor in Atlanta. He was my assistant coach for a few years, and enjoy working with him. I don't know what's his identity, what's his personality as a head coach. I know I really got along with him. He was a great guy when we worked side by side together. But sometimes, Chandler, man, these things can't wait, right? Like, you got a team that's 8-11 after the All-Star break that we're saying that's going to be one of the teams that's going to put pressure on the top. Then you lose 4 out of 5, and if you lose that locker room, why wait? You're in the 5th, but all year long you've been flirting with the number 2. You've been flirting with the number 3. This is somewhat of a slide, and some of these other teams behind you is the reason that you're still in 5th place. Like, Memphis hadn't played their best basketball. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, dealt with a lot of adversity in his 6-year tenure in Memphis. But, if you have an owner, if you have a GM that feels like the time is right now, you got to go ahead and cut the cord. I always reference back to the Blake Griffin trade in Los Angeles. We were in a great run, and it just got to the point where it didn't matter how well we were playing. It was time for them to part ways, and it looks like that was the situation here in Memphis. So I can't speak to what kind of head coach he was. I can't speak to what was going on in Memphis. But usually when these type of things happen, that means you've lost the locker room. And like they said, urgency is a core principle in Memphis. So why wait? And he was the casualty of that.
So there's a lot to this as well, right? We'll get to sort of the assistant coaches they were already gone. So this wasn't even his staff. As you mentioned, Ja's been hurt. He's missed 30 games already this season, and their record since All-Star break. And the games they have won have been against the lousier teams in the league, which is why I think a lot of people are sort of scratching their heads. But the biggest part of all of this, and the part that doesn't make sense, and I know that the GM used the word urgency, but at the moment when this happened, you had 9 games left on your schedule. You are very much in the playoffs. I think the timing for most of us is what's the confusing part, because why not just ride this out? To me, you're sending the messages we're just giving up because we're going to put an assistant in and we'll see what happens and let the season finish, Chandler. But 9 games left, you don't just let him finish.
Yeah, well, I think they just know he's not the guy for the future. They know they're going to make a move. So why not mix it up? Why not light a fire under this team's, what right now going into the playoffs? We know they're a lock for the playoffs, at least, say they get in the play-in, whatever. At least now they give this young guy, I guess, a chance to kind of see what he can do with this roster. At least now he kind of put other coaches on alert and start the job hunt now. But the timing, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to just kind of think of ideas right now on the fly in my head, but No, listen, it doesn't make sense. And again, maybe it's just because they're so certain that this is not the guy for the future. This is not going to be their head coach next year. So why wait? Maybe this kind of brings the team together more when you get rid of a guy like this. Maybe there's some underlying locker room issues that we are unaware about that just couldn't wait, and this was an urgent situation. But it doesn't add up. And then you see all the interviews afterwards. Jaren Jackson saying that's always going to be my dog, and Scottie Pippen saying I love this guy. He's the guy who let my NBA dreams come true. Desmond Bane was, he's been there with him the whole time. And so these players all have these relationships with him. We never seen any of the videos or heard about any of the controversy with this guy. So again, the timing was the weirdest thing, but clearly Kleiman and that front office knows that he's not the guy for the future, and they wanted to make a move now, and they sure did.
Here's where I disagree, though, Beadle. Yeah. I don't think they're mailing it in. We just said it. That's not even his staff. Those guys belong to the organization. And so when you make a switch to somebody that you're already comfortable with, that's in your organization, that you put in place to be one of his assistants, I think they feel as an organization, we're just going to keep moving because we're in the position that we're in. Let's look at an example in Sacramento. Sacramento brings in Doug Christie from front office, from being with the organization. They go on a great run with him. They're a rejuvenated team. Now I can't speak to the relationships that Taylor had with his staff. I don't know, and with his players. I don't have the insight on that. But again, behind closed doors, you don't know how these guys are reacting to the new coach. You don't know how these guys feel about the new coach. So for them to put him in position, and he's also part of the staff, this might can rejuvenate this team and get them back to where they're going. So again, if you're already a sitting duck, if you're already a lame duck in that job, and they already know they're going to move you, it doesn't matter that it's 9 games left. Matter of fact, give us the 2 weeks that we need to finish out this schedule to kind of find a rhythm going into the postseason with the guy that we already felt comfortable with putting on your staff to begin with.
By the way, my favorite thing from the weekend was our guy, Gigi Jackson, thought it was a Centel report. So I just love him. I love that guy, and I can't wait to we should get him back on the show because he'll tell us the truth of what's going on over there. I listened to a lot of sports radio on my 20-hour drive out here, and they had a few reporters that cover the Grizzlies. What was interesting was that, and the Athletic reporting it as well, is that they had been putting in this new offensive strategy that comes from like a D3 school, right? It wasn't Taylor Jenkins. It was one of the assistant coaches who's also now since been fired. And Ja Morant was on board at first and then was not on board. So I'm kind of wondering, like, when you have a guy like Ja Morant, who's obviously the face of the team, Lou, and you're trying to figure this out, and now you've got a whole new coaching staff in place. Is the idea that we're still building around Ja Morant? Like, what do you feel like the Grizzlies are looking to do next?
That's what it looks like. It looked like it was going to be either Ja or Taylor, and you've heard the rumors about maybe Ja being traded in the summer, maybe being moved in the summer. You've heard it, whether it's NBA Centel or some of these anonymous sources that we get from time to time, and all of these things. But this is an organization that's committed to their star player. And talk about putting pieces around him. He got a bunch of pieces around him, got a lot of talent. It looked like the issue that they're having in Memphis is coaching, is scheming. How are we going to go about business? What is our identity? What is our culture? How are we going to play basketball that's going to get us over the edge of some of these other teams? If you're looking around the league, the teams that are the best right now are, for lack of a better word, up-and-coming teams. Like OKC is an up-and-coming team. Houston is another up-and-coming team that are based around young talent. Memphis is still at that pocket. They're at the end of the young tag, but they're in that pocket. You got Jaren Jackson, you got Bane, you got Ja Morant, you got a Gigi Jackson, you got a Scottie Pippen Jr. who's playing good basketball, who's finding a role on that team. So you have a solid core of guys that you can build around, but if you don't have the offensive scheme to put them in to give them an opportunity to be great and put some real pressure on the West, then yeah, you got to part ways and you got to go a different direction. So to me, this is them making a decision to sway Ja Morant's way opposed to a coaching staff's way.
Yeah, and clearly this is what he wants and maybe what the players want. And Kleiman has always been great with having that, that dialogue with players. But again, this is a team that's been in the top of the West pretty much every year he's been there. Yep. They've been, they've been contenders, not exactly to make it to the finals and put themselves in that situation, but they've been this team on the rise that have surrounded Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson with a bunch of talent. And I see the reports on this new offense and this new 5-out offense versus pick and roll run and gun offense. And Ja Morant was getting frustrated with it, and the fan base was growing frustrated with, his end of game situation, things like that. That's all stuff that most coaches have to go through. They're trying to adjust. And I respect Taylor Jenkins for trying to implement new offenses and systems, trying to get this team over the top. So again, I feel for the dude. I don't know him at all, but no doubt in my mind he'll land on his feet, and he'll probably go inherit a really good Philadelphia 76ers team next year, and it'll all just be a memory. But there's no way this dude's not going to be a head coach again in the NBA.
He may come to San Antonio.